webinar today where we'll be looking at setting a strategy for your business. My name's Hannah Curtis. I'm a coordinator with the North Metro Small Business Development Center. We offer free one-on-one consulting with our business consultants to help you start, grow, and prosper your business. And we also offer training programs like the one we're doing right now. This session is also sponsored by the City of Westminster and Westy Rise. So big shout out and thank you to our partners there in the Economic Development Department. This session will be recorded and we'll be sending out the email with the recording and all of the materials later today so that you'll have access to it if you need to refer back to anything. And we also really like these sessions to be interactive. So feel free to type in any questions you have in your questions panel there, probably on the side of your screen if you're watching on a computer, and down at the bottom if you're viewing on a mobile device. So type those in. We'll do our best to answer all of those as we go through today. So with us today, we have two of our North Metro lead consultants, Adrian Hovey and John Jaggers. Adrian is a financial consultant with Edward Jones and wealth of knowledge when it comes to setting a strategy. So we're happy to have him with us today to kind of walk us through some of the steps involved with setting your strategy. We also have John Jaggers, our manufacturing specialist, with us today, and again, tons of knowledge on strategy, years of managerial experience. So we're excited to get into it today. And Adrian and John, I will turn it over to you.
Cool. Thanks for the intro, Hannah. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
So I'll go ahead and start with the first part of this, and it'll be, you know, it's sort of a discussion with as many people who want to participate. So you guys out there in the audience, please send the questions over. John and I will talk through some of these, you know, slides and interesting concepts and things, but really the way for you all to get the most value out of it is to, you know, just participate and let us know what's on your mind. Let us know what's important to you, and we'll make sure we address it. So like Hannah said, I'm a financial advisor with Edward Jones. So for my day job, I'm setting financial strategies for people. And I've been doing this on the business side for, you know, close to 11 years, you know, through my alma mater and some other volunteer work that I've done. So I have a lot of experience with the concept of moving from that tactical, you know, I'm a business owner, I've got to do everything now myself right away, to just kind of peeling back a little bit and setting a strategy and you know, utilizing the resources you have as an organization to you know, help achieve whatever those goals and that strategy is lined out to do. So what we're going to talk about today is just some ways you can start wrapping your head around that and some resources that you guys can use as well. So where I like to start is at the very top, right? The most important thing. I always ask myself my why. I encourage you folks to ask yourselves what your why is. But where do we start? We start with the vision, and the vision is going to drive the strategy, which will drive the goals, and that will be supported by the tactics. So it all starts with vision. And this is, you know, I say it's the why. You can look at this any way you want, right? It's you know, what are you looking for out of your business? You know, what is the purpose? If you know, why are you doing that and not something else, right? What does it mean to you? And a lot of times it will be something internal, and oftentimes it'll be something that's outward facing, right? Like in the community, you know, being a presence, being a leader, contributing, giving back to your community. All those are good reasons why people do businesses. To make money is another good reason. You know, that's always out there, right? We're all trying to earn a living here. So I think whatever that is to you, set it up, write it out, get it out of your head and onto paper, right? And when I have done this with people, it's usually buried in there somewhere, but it's a challenge to get it actually articulated on a piece of paper. And you know you've done it right when it's one sentence long. That's the best advice I could give you all day is your vision, one sentence. It should encapsulate everything that's important to you, and it should encapsulate what you're trying to do with your business. It is very daunting, but I encourage you to spend the time to do that. Okay, next one there. So how does vision matter to strategy? Well, the strategy is the guiding plan that helps you achieve that vision, right? And when we talk about strategy today, we're really trying to understand all the elements and how you're going to execute them in your business. And we're going to draw a very firm line between what is the strategy and what are the goals and tactics that you use to support the strategy. So, we've talked about this over at SBDC quite a bit, where, we tend to be really good at goals and tactics. Those are meaty things. They're tangible. We can grab a hold of them and say, yep, we got to do this week. We got to do this. I know this has to be done. And we're very good at that. But sometimes that gets lost as you bubble up into an actual strategy. So the whole point is our vision tells us where we're going, and our strategy is the plan, the document, the guide, whatever it is for your business, but that tells us how we're going to get there and what we're going to use to get there. So John, you've worked with some local businesses. Is there kind of a standout case you can think of where you said, hey, these folks have a really good strategy, or something that maybe we could toss out there as an example of how this you've seen in your career?
Actually, Hannah and I had a manufacturing class not too long ago, and one of the elements was to develop a strategy. And we're going to talk about this in a second, but we used a SWOT analysis. And one of the participants, who's now one of my clients, really did a nice job of developing the SWOT, and then based on the SWOT, they put together some really sound tactics of what they're going to do. And I had the opportunity to go out and see them, which really last week, which is really one of the first times I felt comfortable to go out to a client site, and they had actually put into action some of the tactics that they had developed, and I'll just talk briefly about them. One of them was communication, and they had wanted to do a weekly performance planning session with their entire group, primarily their executive team, but and they had started that, and they really liked that. The other thing that they wanted to do from a standpoint, because they are growing, I helped them put together an employee handbook, which they introduced and enforced. So that created some discipline and accountability. So those kind of things do work, and I was so pleased to see that they had moved along with really what they had put on paper.
Great, awesome. So, I mean, that's a perfect example. You can see right here, certainly within the experience of the SBDC community, but even within, our local community, people are able to do this, right? We're able to transcend, the concept and the idea, and actually put things to paper and start making it happen. So one of the primary ways that you guys can do this in a simple and elegant manner is by using SMART goals to support your strategy. And I've talked about this before, but I'm going to go a little bit deeper today. I mean, we know what the SMART goals are, but I want to encourage everybody to limit the amount of goals that you have at a high level for your organization, right? So if you're, on paper, if you have more than 3 goals, you are going to be doing yourself a little bit of a disservice. It's very challenging for any person to manage or effectively execute more than 2 or 3 goals. So when you're setting that strategy up, the way that you can kind of make it winnable, or at least help your team wrap their head around it, is to limit your goals to 3. And they should be measurable for sure, and they should have a time stamp attached to them so that you can actually achieve them and move forward. And then your strategy will incorporate the success or failure of those goals as you move forward. But the idea is that it kind of adds tremendous clarity to what you're doing. So when we get down to talk about tactics and things like that, if they're not supporting one of those 3 goals, you don't have to worry about them. I'm giving you permission to just not worry about it, because if you've done your due diligence up front and you've sat down and really discussed with your team and your own business what's most important to this business and set goals around that, then everything else will follow. And this is how you keep your team aligned. And so when you have those meetings, like a progress report or after action report every week, really what you're focused on is, hey, where are we at with these 3 goals? And it'll immediately change the focus of those meetings. It will make them more effective. Sidebar discussions that may have derailed the effectiveness of these previously, all that's going to go away when you can stay laser focused on 3 goals and say, or less, and say, hey, team member A, where are we at on these things? How is that going to support this goal, and so forth. Very, very important and effective.
You know, one of the biggest, if I can just jump in here 1 second, Adrian, one of the biggest, and I've used goals throughout my career. I even have personal goals that my wife and I put together every year. But one of the biggest things that the goals does, it creates focus for your team and it creates accountability. You know, if you're not reaching those goals, then the big why comes out, and maybe you have to change your tactics in order to get to those goals. So I think I think goals are a wonderful tool.
Yeah, key word there, John, accountability, and this is a dangerous word to use, to misuse, I guess, because accountability makes you feel defensive about something, right? But the reality is, as a business owner, you are accountable, and you should hold your team accountable to what's working and what's not working. So be careful around the language you use. I think accountability is the right word to use with your teams, but also, helping people understand that if a goal is not achieved, or if progress doesn't meet the expectation, there's lots of things you can do. That doesn't necessarily mean you're a bad worker. Doesn't mean you're doing things wrong. It just means there's misalignment between what you are doing, its effectiveness, and the goal. And creating that alignment, that's the purpose of that weekly meeting, is to say, hey, are the activities you're doing, are the tactics that you're doing, are they actually, I think the word is efficacious, right? Are they producing the desired result? And so you have that ongoing dialogue with your team, and that's what accountability really means. It's saying, hey, I know you're posting something every day on Facebook, but is that effective? Like, what's that doing for the business? Is that going to help achieve that goal? And that will also, like John just said, it will add clarity and it will add focus to these things. And that's how you can introduce this concept of accountability from a results standpoint, and not a, hey, how do I feel about you as a person standpoint. Kind of takes the emotion out and says, hey, you're doing an awesome job with it. Just do something different, and help us move this goal up a little faster. So there's a real specific difference between a goal and a tactic. And when you talk about tactics, they are very often confused with goals, right? And I'll just give you a simple example. Back to the social media thing. If your goal is to have a social media presence, a tactic that you use is a Facebook post. That's the difference, right? So the act of posting, that's not goal achievement. And really, it's a terrible goal if you just say have a social media presence. Instead, you would want to say, we want to have 5% share of mind in Westminster by Q2 of 2021. That's a much more specific, attainable, measurable goal, right? And so you say to yourself and your team, okay, if we want to have 5% share of market in Westminster, guess what we're going to be doing every week? Measure and share of mind, right? So now whoever's running your social media program is measuring how much share of mind you have, and they're developing a program internal to them that says, hey, we're going to get there using a post a day, using ads, using, word of mouth, whatever that is. And so when you have that meeting, you as a business owner, you turn over to your social media coordinator and say, hey, where are we at with this? And she'll say, we're at 2% share of mind. It's up 0.5% since last week, on track, right? And that's how the flow goes, right? That's a very simple and dumb example. It's going to be more complex, I'm sure, for all of you, but that's the idea of using a tactic to support a goal, to support a strategy. And to, the steps you would do to do that, right? The very first thing you're going to want to do is have a clear understanding of your team. And I know that a lot of you guys are small businesses. I'm a team of two, and so your team can be whatever size your team is. If it's just you, this is not going to mean a lot to you. But if there are other people on there, you got to decide who is important, who gets a say, who should have their own goals that support the organization's goals, and who's responsible for what. And so there's a trust level that has to be there that, that's appropriate for you and your business. But there is going to be some core leadership team that you're going to have to rely on to help you in most cases. And that could be external advisors, right? Could be people on your board. It could be people, friends and family also. So I think the sky's the limit here, but understanding that you don't have to take on all this alone. It could be a consultant like John. You know, he could be somebody who you rely on to help you set these things. So first step, make sure you have a leadership team, make it known in your organization, make it consistent, and make sure they know what their roles are. Number two, this is worth dedicating resources to, right? You know, everybody, I think, has been stressed out or overworked at some point in their life. And the way that you get time back as a business owner is to begin to create processes that allow other people to do the work that they should be doing and allow you to do the work that you should be doing, which is working on your business. So make the time. When you're setting up a strategy, it's just an iterative process that isn't going to be done in one meeting. It isn't going to be done in one day, and it needs to be revisited all the time to make sure that it's still effective. So when I say make the time, I mean make a commitment with you and your leadership team to dedicate as much time out of your week as is necessary to get these discussions tightened up and to make sure you have a way to measure tactics, measure goals, and that sort of thing. SWOT analysis, right? So everybody has a pretty good idea of what they're good at and what they're not good at. I encourage you to go through that exercise for your business, right? What's your business good at? What are the strengths of your business, your marketing plan, your team? What are your weaknesses? And do this exercise, right? Make this chart for your company. Have your key leadership do it for their teams and understand what you're good at, where the threats are this year, next year, in 10 years, what your opportunities are, and have that discussion so that it's not all up in your head. Everybody on the leadership team understands it, and that you can actually articulate, what's happening. And this is a great way to build ownership amongst your team as well, because they're going to see things that you might not see. You know, their daily experience is different from yours as a business owner, so their ability to assess strengths, weakness, opportunities, and threats also helps them. Draws them in and gives them more skin in the game and helps you, with a clear picture of what's happening in your business.
Adrian, if I can jump in here just 1 second.
100%.
Because this is one of my favorite tools in developing strategies. A couple of key points, you kind of hit on them. I'll just reinforce them. Your executive team, your key players need to be part of this discussion. Typically what I do is I give them this worksheet beforehand and ask them to take some time and come up with some points that demonstrate strengths, weaknesses, threats, and opportunity. And then, as you said, you take the time to pull the group together. Typically, I would take an hour and a half to go through this discussion and just list each one of the key points. And it's pretty amazing that given the time and the opportunity, you'll kind of weed out what your best opportunities are. Your best opportunities will turn into your tactics that are going to reinforce the goals that you talked about. So this is a really, really good tool. Like I said, I probably use this 30 times, and almost 30 out of 30, they walked away with a better understanding of where their business is at. So.
Yep. No, I mean, it rarely ever doesn't hurt. Sorry, rarely ever doesn't help. Almost always there's value in this exercise. I've never seen it not produce some, important nuance about a business. And in the same way that you want to limit your goals to 2 or 3, when you do this exercise, you're going to find that the things on the top, the 2 or 3 weaknesses, the 2 or 3 strengths, those are the most important to your business, right? You might have 7 or 8 on that list, but those ones at the bottom are not going to be the ones that are, driving change, right? It's Pareto's principle, the 80-20 rule, right? 80% of your strengths are going to be 1 or 2 things, and you might have a few other ones down at the bottom that are the other 20% of your business's strengths. But you want to be making sure that there is some kind of priority understanding here, and that you're making best use of what those strengths are. To dive a little bit deeper in that, Two things I've seen interesting in my work with business owners and business planning is on the threat column or the threat quadrant, talking about barriers to entry. This is always a surprise to people. So when their business is easy to just start up, right? Like a food truck or something, there's no barrier or very little barrier to entry to that type of business. And that usually prompts significant amount of discussion in terms of threats. And that's just, one example, but understanding, what the key differentiators are of your business, that's a thing that comes out of this exercise. It's very important to do. So highly, highly, highly recommend it. And if you have any questions about how that might work for your organization, John is probably a good person to talk to from a practical standpoint. And, I can address any and all questions on it also, but this is a good exercise that I think, as long as you're sort of diligent about it and you are including your leadership team, you'll get a lot out of it. All right, so we're back to vision again. I look at vision as, the main thing that's gonna tell me if I'm doing something right or not. Meaning, if I do something in my business today, did it help me achieve my vision? If it's a check mark, then that's a good decision. If it didn't help me achieve my vision, it's probably not the best decision or the best use of my time. So again, dedicating that time with your leadership team to define your company's vision is crucial, because you need them to be aligned with your company's vision so that the things that they do are the right things for your business. So do that work, make sure that it's defined, and ask your team every week, hey guys, what's our vision? What are we doing this for? Remind them that it's a key component of this, and that will help them stay aligned with you. And when there's drift, that's something you need to address as a business owner. Okay. After action report, we've talked about this. This is that closing that communication loop every week, right? Tell us what went well this week. Tell us how you achieved your goals, or if you didn't achieve your goals, what you're going to do differently. And really, whether that's every week or every 2 weeks, you have to decide what's best for your own business. But you having that communication loop, again, keeps your leadership team engaged, keeps them with skin in the game, and helps them understand how important communication is to achieving the business. And if you stay focused on the goals during an after action report, all the unimportant stuff will drop away, right? You don't need to worry about what's happening, that within a particular division or team or effort. Is the goal on track? Then you're doing a good job. Okay, and then finally, of course, what's this all about? Defining a strategy, right? So once we have all those elements in place, we've got our leadership team, we've got our goals, we've got our vision. Your job as a business owner is to set up the plan for the organization to achieve those goals. And part of that is pushing those goals onto your people and saying, okay, the organization's goal is, 2 million in sales for the next quarter. How are you going to help us achieve that? And let them tell you how they're going to do that, right? Let them come to the table with ideas. Let them come to the table with programs and help you strategize it. But basically, once you have a vision, once you have goals, once you have those things, then you can have a strategy to achieve them. And then what's it all about? Again, this is a recurring theme, right? Communication. Communicate the strategy to your team, have them communicate it to their team, communicate it to your customers, right? Where appropriate, all of those things. You can't talk enough, and there's endless tools and apps and ways you can increase, the interconnectedness of your company and the ways that you communicate. But the worst thing to do is to be too busy to actually have a channel open to your employees to tell them what they're doing. So dedicate the time, dedicate the resource, make sure that you have some way to tell even the lowest man on the totem pole, as they say, at your business, to be able to communicate to them what's going on and how important they are to it. So I'm going to pause. That's pretty much the end of my part of this. But Hannah, are there questions or something we can address from the audience before we go on?
We don't have questions in here right now. So anyone, if you do have those burning questions, feel free to type those in. We'll have some time at the end. We can cover those as well. So thanks for such a thorough description on that. And so that was really helpful to set up what goes into a strategy, kind of how you go about it. What John is going to transition into now is some of the issues that we're seeing businesses facing in the current market right now, and how you can use your strategy to help prepare yourself to address those issues.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Hannah. As she had said earlier, my name is John Jaggers. I'm a lead consultant for SPDC. I have been involved in SPDC for the last 7 years, and I've probably worked with a couple hundred different companies in that time frame, which is a wonderful exposure to have from a standpoint of really seeing what's going on in the work environment. I can tell you that in talking to my clients this year, COVID has changed the work landscape. It's not what it was beforehand. If you think we're not still reeling from the pandemic, we are, and it's going to continue for a while. So really what I want to talk about is those strategies, those actions that you can take that will help stabilize ourselves from that pandemic. So we're going to talk about 3 different things primarily. How to retain excellent employees, because that is a major challenge. How to deal with sales as they escalate, which right now I've got 30 clients. 30 out of 30 are experiencing that pent-up demand that is now hit, and they are very busy. And then we're going to talk a little bit about marketing strategies. So go ahead. So employee retention. There's really a new mindset from how we should approach work, different than pre-COVID. Those clients that I see that are successful, they really have expanded their role from a standpoint of being involved, making sure that their employees are financially paid competitively, that the physical environment that they're working in is sound, and that their mental well-being is sound also. Sounds like a lot, but it's all part of the culture that you build, which I'm going to talk about repetitively throughout this, my little discussion. So the other piece is honesty, integrity are in high demand. Again, we've gone through some very uncertain times. If you reflect back to what Adrian said from a standpoint of after action meetings, you got to be very candid and honest with your employees as to where you stand, where the sales are, where the performance goal criteria are, and create that accountability. As a business owner, don't be scared to be accountable. You should be. That's part of, believe it or not, that is part of your employees' expectations. But the other part is because we've come out of a time when our employees have either worked virtual or worked not at all, they have become much closer to their families. So flexibility in the work-life balance is very, very important now today. And I guess the bottom line is leadership has never been more important than it is right today. Empathy and flexibility are essential in order to how you treat your employees and how you retain your employees. Okay, go ahead. So from an employee standpoint, they have different expectations. They need to feel essential, they need to be heard, and they want to contribute. It's a whole different ballgame where they want to be part of what goes on. And the other part is they want to know what is the clear opportunity path for me. Now, a lot of times that has to do with skill development, because that's what they carry with them. That's how they sell themselves. So to having a structured skill training program that creates clear expectations and generates qualified employees for yourself. If I can go back to the one client I talked about earlier, I went and visited. They have a wonderful culture. Okay, they're very very honest, very low key, but they have high expectations of their employees. But the key thing that draws employees into them and helps them retain them is their employees are highly involved in decision making of the whole operation, and they are listened to. And when they come up with good ideas, they put them into action. So they feel part of what's happening. The other thing is when they bring in a newer employee, they will take the time to make sure that they are 100% trained using a structured format that will get them to their highest performance level. So those things are really, really important from the employee standpoint. Okay, go ahead. So talk about culture. Okay, so how do you draw them in? How do you draw employees in? That's one of the biggest challenges that I know my clients and you are probably facing. Well, again, it's a different environment. You better make sure that you have very competitive pay and benefits and even potentially bonuses. They're all part of the recruitment tools that you've got to use. One other thing that I've noticed when you post on Indeed or any other websites, your job ads can't be just a description of the job. It needs to be also a description of the values and uniqueness of your business. That's what's going to attract good employees to you. How are we different? We're not just some job shop that makes I don't know, whatever, some kind of widgets. We don't care. You come in, we're gonna pay you so and so. But we are different because we do have a culture, we do have values, and we are unique in what we do, which is going to, it's going to create some attractiveness to those potential employees. The other thing that you need to make sure that you advertise is that you do, in fact, have apprenticeships and or some type of formal training program, because that kind of opens the door. If I'm a potential employee, I've got some skills, but I don't have all the skills that you're describing, but I kind of like what you're saying about your environment. And I understand that you do training. I'm going to come in the door. I'm going to say, okay, well, you give me the training. I'm willing to learn. I want those skills, and I want to contribute to your organization. And it makes a big difference as far as the retention part of it. Okay, Ann. So again, 30 out of 30 of my clients are facing that pent-up demand. The sales is surging, and what are they doing to get through that? Well, number one, they have to have the employees, obviously, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But you also have to make sure that you are doing those things from a standpoint of goals and tactics that will create a competitive edge. And the way that comes about is through continuous improvement of your products and services. And the way that evolves is listen to your employees. Again, they want to be part of what's going on. They want to be involved. They want to contribute. So seek their involvement. It's going to just strengthen their commitment, and it's going to make your operation much better. The other thing that my clients are using, and a lot of them are evolving, just because it is necessary, is good use of software and apps. There's a lot of fairly simple technology out there that's going to make a difference as far as how your operation performs. I can think of a couple things. For example, every one of my employees uses QuickBooks. I'm not here to sell QuickBooks, but it's a fairly easy tool from a standpoint of financial tracking and reporting, which is really key to understand where you are at during this upswing in sales. A couple other tools that my clients use, one of them is called Smart Sheets, and one of them is called Mondays.com. And those are scheduling and material tracking apps that are very simple. They're not complex at all. but it provides a very clear picture of, what needs to be produced or what services need to be provided and what materials need to be ordered in order to be able to do that. Another one that some of my clients are using is point of sale. When they interact with customers either through their website and or in person. Square is excellent. Lightspeed is good. They're all actually, they provide good data to in order to take a look at where are your sales at, what are you selling the most of, and where do you need to order materials or services in order to stay up with that demand. Okay. So the other, besides getting employees, the other challenge that I'm seeing happening, and it's I'm sure that you either experience it or you read about it. The supply chain is very difficult right now. Sales have outpaced the ability to produce a lot of different things. So really what I suggest you do is make sure that you seek out multiple suppliers. It may not always be the ideal, but you got to go out there and do some research. Who's ever doing your purchasing and have to be pretty creative. If you're having things shipped in from large distances, one of the tools that my clients use is third-party logistics, which is really they are in the business of making sure that your materials get from point A to you in a timely fashion. And then, even though this is not economically beneficial, sometimes you do have to order in larger quantities just to increase your stock because there's such a long lead time on those particular materials or supplies. And then a point that Adrian made, which I think is this is just an excellent point. Okay, so your customers have high expectations, but if you know you're facing a materials shortage or a supply chain issue, communicate with them. Let them know that okay, it's not that we're not trying to produce the product or service. It's just that we have a supply chain issue, and give them an estimated time frame in order to fulfill those orders. That's really key. Communication. People are well aware, the communities are well aware that there is a supply chain issue. And when you're honest and candid about it, they really appreciate it and they understand. Get frustrated, obviously, but at least you're letting them know what to expect. Okay. And the third piece is the marketing strategy. Well, having gone through COVID, I'm sure most of you have had to pivot and change your approach. You're probably already using e-commerce because you had to throughout the pandemic. But it's really important that you don't, now at this point, you got to continue to pay close attention to your websites, to be actively involved in social media and email campaigns. You got to get the word out there that you're there. You do have a great product, and again, there's such a high demand. It's an ideal time to be doing that. But the other piece is you need to, when you're starting out or when you're searching for, where can I get more sales? You got to make sure you understand your target market in detail. That's a key marketing strategy. Who are you after, and what's your competition in that particular sector? Do you need to adjust to that sector to have a little different product? And one of the other things that I think is really key, and if you don't think that the world is not looking at Yelp and or other sources to see how you're performing, they are. Okay, I do it all the time. I don't even go out to, not that I go to a restaurant very often, but I won't go to anywhere unless I look at a review. So those reviews and testimonials, they're going to attract new customers, and provide very helpful feedback to you as to how you're doing. So, so marketing is very important. Now, I'm not the marketing guru. I'm kind of the manufacturing guy, but because it was so critical, I wanted to make sure that we discuss it. And I'll do a little ad here for one of our other consultants. Peter Brissett is putting on a digital boot camp in August. He is excellent. He will take you right down the road of understanding how to be most effective from a standpoint of your website, your social media, and email. So here's to Peter. Okay, okay, Anna, thank you.
Great, thank you so much for that, both of you. We did have some great questions come in that really hit on both sides of what we talked about today. So I guess first question, going off of our marketing discussion, the question is, should I go through the steps of the process that Adrian described for my marketing strategy in addition to my overall strategy, or does my marketing strategy fit within the overall strategy?
Adrian, you want to answer that?
Sure. So if I think I understand the question correctly, you're asking if you should go through the exercise separately for your marketing strategy, or if it should be incorporated into the other. And I guess the way I would answer that is, again, you kind of can't start in one place and then finish in another place. So you always want to have an overall strategy first. And within that is what contribution marketing is going to make, what contribution sales are going to make, what contribution operations are going to make, and what contribution, people resources are going to take, right? They all flow together into an overall strategy. And it's done that way because we all have limited resources, we all have limited time, and we can't give everybody everything they want. We can't give all the areas of our business the attention that they deserve sometimes. And so you start with what's most important to your business, right? What are those top 3-level goals that you want to have? And then as you build that out, it will become clear to you what contributions you need to get from your marketing team. And then once they've got their goal assignments, or your marketing team has their goal assignments, then you have a sub strategy, right, within there that say, hey, the marketing team is gonna execute these goals or whatever. And you'll see a lot of elements of that come into play, right? John mentioned these technology investments and things. If you're in a situation where you are receiving all this pent up demand and sales are going through the roof and that sort of thing, it may be the perfect time to make some of these technology investments, right? So they tend to happen a lot in the marketing area, I guess is why I'm mentioning it. There's a ton of technology that can help accelerate marketing stuff, but no, I would say it's a coherent strategy. Marketing will have its own component. It'll have its own contribution to that, but you begin by setting your goals at the organization level first, so that you don't have one department out here that's out of sync with what everyone else is doing.
I think what I would add to that is, and you're right on the money, Adrian, but using those tools. I mean, you might think you have an effective marketing plan, but there's some very good tools out there, including what Google provides, that will provide data as to really how effective your website or your social marketing is. Don't just guess. Use the data that's available, and you're going to know what direction you need to go.
Yep.
Fantastic, thank you. So next question is about the process again. They ask, how often do I need to review my strategic plan? Is annually enough or more often?
Well, only you can answer that. I would say, thinking back on my own experience, I would say that your plan, a year should not go by when it's not addressed. The goals and things, those are going to ebb and flow, right? And those will be addressed hopefully every week as you're working through the plan. But there is kind of a sweet spot in my mind of, if we're revisiting our plan our whole strategic plan every quarter, well, it probably wasn't a great strategic plan to begin with, because, you know, if things are pushing it out of alignment so quickly, then, you know, perhaps more diligence needs to be done, right? But then you don't want to go too long, because a lot will happen throughout the course of the year. You know, sometimes very, very, you know, major impacting events will happen, like COVID, for example, that will force you to revisit the plan. But no, I would say a year cadence sounds about right as a starting point to me. But you know, it's different for every business. These are just the, you know, thoughts of one person, I suppose.
I guess my answer is I don't think it hurts from a standpoint of semi-annual, because again, a lot of things can happen in 6 months. I mean, you want to look at your goals and see where you're at, and then look at your tactics and see how they relate to your goals. You know, I'm a big believer in tracking things, so charts and graphs on performance, whether it's sales or quality or labor, or, you know, whatever it is from a standpoint of cost, I think are really important. And to have those available at least on a monthly basis to all employees, I think is a really key part of goal understanding. But as far as the strategy goes, yeah, maybe twice a year is very appropriate.
Great, thank you. You both talked about how important employee involvement is in the process and in your strategy. So this question is kind of getting at that. Do either of you have good examples of how you've dealt with an employee suggestion that you did not feel was the right move?
I think there's all kinds of techniques that I've used in the past. From a manufacturing standpoint, I use lean manufacturing techniques that require a high level of employee involvement. But again, and that can be actually used on really any type of business. But I think two of the really key things is make sure that there is some vehicle that allows good communication from your employees to management, and some vehicle of follow-up to make sure that, oh, this is a good idea, we're gonna try it, we're gonna implement it, and or maybe it's not. But again, being honest and candid is the key. So, and even you can go more formal from a standpoint of pull all your employees together and say, okay, what we're going to do is have a brainstorming session. Bring one idea to the table that you think is going to create improvement. That right there opens the door to the employees saying, interesting. They're going to actually listen to what I have to say. I don't want to belabor it, but I'll tell you a really quick story. I had a plant in Athens, Georgia, very, very tough, difficult plant to run. And one of the key employees was very, very negative. I would bring him in my office once a week and say, Larry, okay, you don't think I'm listening to you, but I am. So give me one good idea of how we're going to make things better. I was like, he fell on the floor because I was listening, and we tried those ideas. He was a very talented, smart individual. I just turned around his energy towards improvement, and guess what? Word got out very quickly that management does listen to what you have to say.
And not much to add to that, other than going back to the theme of our previous discussion. Communication is probably the first and most important thing to do, and one is when you're soliciting feedback from employees, or when you have an open door policy, or when you have suggestions, the first thing I would recommend that you do to everyone in the organization is explain how that works, right? And that goes something like this: like, hey team, it's very important to our organization that we incorporate company feedback. We want to hear from you. We want to know what's going well with you, what's not going well with you. Bring those ideas up. Let's talk about them. You have to all understand that for various reasons, we may not implement what you're suggesting, But in some cases we will, if it's right for the organization, and we're going to talk about that, and we're going to make sure that there's always an open dialogue and so forth. So one, you want to communicate the expectation that bringing forth ideas does not mean acceptance of ideas, right? And people need to understand the difference between that. So that's the first thing you can do. And then the other thing is, I don't know if you've all heard this fail fast mentality that's out there. The concept is very simple. You want to give people enough room to maneuver and to try things themselves that may or may not work. And that is a direct correlation to goal achievement, right? So if somebody comes to you with an idea that you don't think is very good, I might encourage you to give them some maneuvering room, right? And say, okay, if that's an idea you have and you think it's going to work, if it's not dangerous, it's ethical, it's within our business operating parameters, then it can be a management point, and you can say, all right, go for it. Knock it out of the park. Let's talk in a week. If things are, progressing fine and we're meeting goals and your new process works, great. If not, I'm going to come to you with, and I want to know how you're going to make it better or what you're going to do to fix it. And really, I understand that's not an easy thing to let everybody go and do. And sometimes ideas are terrible, or they don't fit, and that's fine too. But I think whatever, again, communicate with people and make them understand or help them understand that being heard is different from being obeyed or listened to, I guess, is the, or implemented, whatever. And then, wherever possible, give people the room to do something their own way.
I think that's an excellent point. And the other thing that it creates is you'll find that they're committed to try to make that idea work because it's their idea and they want it to work.
Ownership. Yep.
So that ownership is really key.
Yep.
That's great. Thank you. This next one is how formal does the business, or does the my strategy need to be? Does it go in my business plan?
50 pages typed, 10-point font, 30 pages of appendix. No,
no.
Here's what I've seen done. What I have done personally is not everybody's a fan of PowerPoints, but what I have done is incorporate that into a presentation type vehicle that I can socialize with the organization, right? That's what I've done all the way since back in the Navy days, where I had to communicate to people above me what I was doing and people below me what they needed to do, is to have some way to do that. And that also helps you outsource it to different parts of your organization, right? Like obviously you're setting up the strategy, so you own part of that document, but then you can turn around and say, hey, I want to see these, I want to see your plan, and your plan in the same format. And then you can combine everything and run it that way. That's a simple, easy way to do it. To me, it doesn't exist if it's not documented in some way. So, that's a lot of gray area, but if it's in your head, it's not a plan. You don't really need a 50-page, cumbersome document, though. That's my 2 cents.
But Adrian, let me ask this question. So your strategy is driven by tactics, but also those tactics relate to goals. So shouldn't the way I've always done it is with those goals, I've had 3 or 4 ongoing tactics that will contribute and or achieve those particular goals. And that's really how I've put together strategic plans in the past. So you got the goals, you got the tactics. And it doesn't have to be, to your point, it doesn't have to be complicated. You can probably easily do it. And I've done it on 1 or 2 pages at most. I mean, why get complex? Now, there's a lot of detail that would go into those tactics that you may want to detail with those responsible, but I wouldn't go too much beyond that.
Yeah. Simple is almost always better. Simple means you understand it really well.
That's right.
Great, thank you. That's all so helpful. Those are all of our questions for now. So anyone, if you do have any more burning questions, our contact info is up on the screen right here. You can always reach out there and we can help you get connected, like we said, with our business consultants who can walk through your strategy or your business plan or your marketing plan, whatever questions you're having as it relates to your business. We're here to help. It's free, it's one-on-one and confidential, so we really encourage you to reach out and get that set up. And I will also mention there's a couple of handouts in your GoToWebinar panel that we'll include in the follow-up email as well, but if you want to download them right now, there's a handout that goes through your vision, tactics, your SWOT analysis, your strategy, just to kind of lay it all out in a simple format there. And our slides are also attached there in the handout. Also want to just give another big thank you to City of Westminster and the Economic Development Department. I don't think I mentioned this in the beginning, but in the chat there is the link to their website where you can see their upcoming events and other resources that the city has specific to Westminster businesses, and a lot of really great stuff there. So I would encourage you to check that out. And Adrian and John, thank you so much for your time today and all your expertise. And I think that's all we have today, unless either of you have any parting words to give to our audience.
Nope. Have a great summer.
Yeah, no kidding, for sure. I guess my only last comment is, and we've said this throughout, is take the time to develop a strategy. You know, there's no real right or wrong. We'll give you some tools that will hopefully will help you. But if you do have a strategy and you do communicate it, you're going to be so far ahead. It's just amazing.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thank you all for joining, and we wish you a great rest of your day.
Awesome. Bye now.
Thank you. Bye.